Welcome to Witchy Wit Podcast, episode 18.
I don't think anybody ever accused me of being a witch or asked if I might be one during that time. There might have been occasions when there was the B word involved, but not so much the W one. But I did, people that knew me well knew that I had a spiritual path that was this kind of thing.
That was the voice of one of our elders, Maggi. Listen in on this episode as she interviewed with us and hear how she's powerful, compassionate, and skilled as a priestess. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Witchy Wit Podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
races,
and backgrounds.
With a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true, our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves. Episode 18, here we are for Witchy Wit, and we are currently on Kimberlyn's back porch. It's quite wonderful. So before we hop into our interview with Maggi, which I just love this interview and I love being with her, Kimberlyn, what's going on with you?
Well, being on my back patio is my check-in, I think. So as the weather has gotten nicer, I've been trying to spend a little bit more time outside. And not trying, I mean, it's just, it's been calling to me. And I noted earlier that it's a little dusty out here and there's things that could be better, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just so delightful to be able to sit in my chair and watch squirrel watch me. Literally 2 days ago, I was sitting here and that squirrel kind of looked at me like, And then I was kind of giving it some shade, and you see the squirrel.
And a blue jay just landed right behind you on your bird bath, and now he's flying towards us. This is beautiful.
This is great.
This is wonderful.
Yes. It's so much fun, and so what was I saying? Oh, the squirrel. So I was looking at the squirrel, and I was kind of giving it a little shade, and it looked at me like, "Bitch, I'll come through this screen. Don't even try." Oh, because it's screened in, so there's no mosquitoes. Yay! Anyway, I'm just enjoying the great outdoors, and it's helping me get through some grading because it's the end of the semester.
Anything that helps you get through grading.
Oh my gosh! Well, besides wine.
That kind of helps.
That helps
grade.
them.
That helps them.
That helps them more than it helps me. Yeah, but makes the grades a lot higher probably than they would be any other time. So, what about with you?
So this is my first week that I have been really focusing on reintegration post-COVID. I'm fully vaccinated. And so I've started kind of reintegrating in some ways, and not even with my actions, but just with my thoughts. And it's been kind of challenging. And I just wanted to share that, like, I don't know where the line is. Like, I don't know what's okay and I don't know what's not. And I probably read more on the CDC website than, I don't know, 99% of people, like I have like CDC guidelines saved to my phone. and let me be clear, not with you, because I know you know this, but just with our audience, like, I am not a rule follower. No. I think that rules are guidelines to help people make decisions, and that sometimes I come to better decisions than most people. So I will do that. I will do as I desire. So I'm not like a super rule follower, but it's just interesting for me. Like, there's a large event coming up this summer that I'm considering going to, but it's vaccine only, and they're checking the vaccination cards, and there's consequences and all that, but I'm like, I don't know is that okay? Is it, well, what about like a small gathering of people? Like, it's just an interesting process I've never lived through a process where there's no social norms around it. There's no like cultural norms, and even the science is clear, but it's not necessarily clear on how to be applied.
Right.
So I just feel like I'm living in this gray area, but thank goodness being a witch has trained me to live in gray areas.
I love the fact that you said no social or cultural norms, because that's the thing is, even as a rebel, you knew what the rules were, so you can say, well, I'm going to step outside
That's
them,
true.
or I'm going to use this part of them, or whatever.
Right.
But we have no rules, and even this, as you say, the CDC, all they have are, reasoned guesstimates of what, what's going to happen, because we have, I mean, this is new.
Right.
So
yeah.
So yeah, I'm feeling your pain. I'm basically just not doing anything. It's so funny. Someone gave me tickets to the opera last week, and our opera tickets are expensive.
They are.
I think the cheapest ones are maybe $70 or $80, right? Maybe they're slightly cheap, but if you want to actually see and hear the opera,
yes, if you don't want to be like with binoculars, being like, I think they're down there.
Exactly, with tissues up your nose to stench the nosebleed. They're pretty expensive, and I said, I'm not sure, because I'm just not in that get out there, be around people. I'm really kind of enjoying being introverted. So my integration, I think, is going to be a lot slower than yours, with very few considerations about what is appropriate or whatever. It's just going to be basically being no, and then one day I think I will finally say yes, and that'll be a lovely thing.
I think that was Snow blowing his nose at you, being like, my mom's not leaving. My mom's staying with me.
He's saying, yes, she's going to stay on this porch with me, which is making him very, very happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the dogs are so spoiled now.
Oh my gosh. I know when people start going back to work, the dogs are going to have stuff. They're going to need therapy.
We're going to need dog therapy.
Yeah, because particularly the COVID dogs, the dogs that people got as puppies and are only used to everybody being there at home playing with them. It's going to be real ugly. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, if you're into animal therapy, just get ready to raise your rates, because you're going to be making a lot of money.
So Maggie, how would you describe yourself and your practice? Like, how do you identify, and what words do you use to identify yourself?
Well, I don't have a totally simple answer to that question. I do claim a lot of different things. I consider myself to be in a pagan tradition, a feminist pagan, basically, and a witch. I am an ordained priestess, and I also serve sometimes in that capacity. So all of those things are things that fit me. Oh, and also the church that I attend, I identify with that, and I also I particularly identify as a feminist pagan. Don't typically use the W word because it mostly takes too long to explain. And anyway, it's sort of contextual within our local circle. I mostly see myself as a witch, and within some of the other circles that I participate in, I'm known as what is now called a priestex. Priestess. I can't even say it. It's like a non-gendered version of priestess. Priestess or something.
How do you spell
I
that?
was going to ask how that's spelled.
Let me see if I can spell it. I think it's Priestesx.
Oh, X. Okay. Priestess.
Priestess. Yeah.
X. Latin X.
I'm just trying to get that into my vocabulary, but as you can tell, it's not quite there yet.
Yeah.
I am a witch and a priestess in some of those other places, and really it's only within the denomination that ordained me that I sort of am ordained person, or if I'm marrying somebody, but I don't do much of that anymore. I don't find that I am particularly drawn to doing it for strangers. So kind of gave that up.
So as a pagan and sometimes witch, sometimes uttered witch, what does that look like from day to day? What when you say a witch, what does that mean in terms of your behavior, like your practice?
that I always have an altar. I have usually some representation of goddess on it. I claimed 3 goddesses when I was ordained, and those are the ones that sort of stick by me. I mean, not that I refuse to participate in a ritual that doesn't involve them, but Hecate really rules from Samhain till Imbolc, and Bridget from Imbolc to the spring equinox, and Gaia from there until Samhain. And so one of those goddesses is usually on my altar during the season that I feel strongly drawn to that particular manifestation of goddessness. But I also can go with a more universal sense of goddess as a single being, but has many different manifestations in the ways that people relate to her, and not as a totally fixed thing.
Thank you.
That makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
It does.
Day to day.
Mhm.
Okay, other than an altar and having a certain goddess in my awareness, I do spell work for political causes and for other things. I don't do a lot of spell work specifically for myself most of the time. When I had to sell my parents' home, I did a real detailed spell for that the right person with the right amount of money and all the right circumstances would appear and pay. And that pretty well worked out. It was on the low end of what was acceptable, but still it was fine. And I have done some there's some especially troublesome neighbors that we have here, and I have sometimes done some very gentle binding sorts of things. Basically, that they become happier people, that they find other ways to express themselves, that they not disrupt our association, but things like that. And political spells. I've been doing fairly detailed political spell ever since I guess it was the fall equinox I began, and I haven't stopped because things are still happening. And so that's I also feel I feel a very strong connection both to the moon and to the earth. And I feel like I can connect to that energy. And I do a moon devotional, I guess. I use a moon devotional, and I do that first thing when I wake up and last thing I do when I go to sleep. And I always look for the moon, and it really bothers me when we have day after day of cloudy weather and there's no moon, day or night. I don't like it, but things happen. You have to put up with it. But I always know where the moon is, what phase she's in, and I feel like I can connect even when I can't see her. I also feel like I draw a lot of strength and energy from the earth, and that there's a kind of healing energy that comes to me through the earth that is not mine, but I'm able to direct it towards healing for people that I know, sometimes more very generally for everyone who needs healing, but often it's focused on a specific group of people that have my mind on. And I've kind of taken to having a candle lit whenever, not when I leave the house, but whenever I'm home, and that I say to it every time I light it that the healing continues. And I say that when I blow it out as well. And I think of those people that I'm holding in my heart for healing. Gosh, I spend a lot of time, planning rituals, participating in rituals, reading about doing work that's connected in one way or another to one of my pagan communities. My political spells are all part of a communal process. And so I guess there's quite a bit that really I've taken leadership roles. I identify as an organizer, I guess I would have to say. That was one of the things I claimed in my training as a priestess, whatever. And so that I feel drawn to doing that work, to helping with the organizational work of things related to my groups.
Thank you so much. Just as an aside, one thing that I've learned I've learned a lot of things from Leilani, but one thing that I remember that's appropriate in terms of our conversation that I learned from Leilani that I've been doing now since she mentioned it to me is I put my candle in the bathtub. So if you want to keep it going, it's like it could fall over, and the worst that can happen is you get wax in your bathtub, but it's not going anywhere. So
or your cat's tail could catch fire.
Well, I also do not have a cat. I don't have a cat.
There is no safe place when you have a cat.
Okay, just let that sit in the back of your head for a while. Okay, thank you.
The tips of modern witchery, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Maggie, could you tell us about how you discovered this path within yourself and how you started to integrate that path into your life?
Sure. In 1986, the denomination that my church is part of put out a curriculum that was a feminist curriculum that introduced female images of God, and also introduced paganism as a spiritual path, which I hadn't really had on my radar. Kind of always knew that I was drawn to doing ceremony that felt spiritual to me. When I did theater work, there was an aspect of that to it. And when I was a campfire girl back in the day, my favorite thing was the rituals where the beads would be given out and all that ceremony and song and whatever. So there were hints there that and the feeling of a sacredness about nature that I always had that, probably was an early indicator, but I didn't have any name to put to it. And so once I was exposed to that, I immediately started forming a circle of women to practice this stuff, even though I knew practically nothing. I mean, I was really a babe in the woods trying to work things out, but I wanted to work them out with other people because I'm not primarily a solo practitioner at all. That's not my jam. My jam is being in a circle of women, singing together and doing ritual, and so I tried to do that immediately. And then after that, a little while, I had occasion to attend a witch camp that Starhawk was offering in this general area of the world. And that also was a huge thing where I think that was really where I became fully comfortable with the term witch for myself. because it wasn't that I thought witches were bad at all. I just felt like maybe I wasn't good enough to be a witch. I mean, didn't know enough about these things to be calling myself that. But then I decided I was. But actually, a little before that, I discovered the training program that later led to my ordination. And so I was so interested. I was doing most of the stuff that was in the curriculum already. And what I wasn't doing was stuff I wanted to do and was interested in. So I really, I just dived into that. And that was the other part. And that's when I started thinking that I could become a priestess. So it was a mandatory 6-year program, but I took 8 years to do it. As it got further along, you had more advanced things and more difficult things to do. And, so it took longer than 6 years, but I really feel like I've gotten a lot out of that. And I still connect. And one of the blessings of this Zoomiverse that we live in now is that I have more opportunities to connect with the women that are part of that group, because most of them are not here in this area of the world. And so, we can get together on Zoom in ways that we never could achieve if people had to go physically to another location to be together. So that's been an interesting experience. I not that I don't want to be in person with people again, but there are certain things that I hope we don't lose about being able to gather across the miles. So I don't identify with the term shaman. I have done work with people who do shamanic journeying and shamanic things, and I've taken part in them and I've really loved them, but that's not my path. So that's kind of the story of that, I think.
I'd like to kind of ask a follow-up to that. And
Sure.
And so, it's, first of all, thank you for sharing. It's so wonderful to hear about the beginnings of your story. I met you when you were like, when I say fully fledged, I mean, you were like a hawk, so hearing like about your, sprouting the little bird baby feathers is just so wonderful. Right. And for me to hear. I'd like to ask, so I hear about the work that you've done, and I'm sure that outside of the work the spiritual work, that you've actually put food on the table and, maybe dressed and maybe left your house to go to work. And so how do you kind of negotiate those two worlds? Are they two worlds for you?
Somewhat, they're two worlds, but there was always a little bit of, connection there. I worked as a librarian, as a library administrator for many years, and I don't think anybody ever accused me of being a witch or asked if I might be one during that time. There might have been occasions when there was the B word involved, but not so much the W one. But I did, people that knew me well knew that I had a spiritual path that was this kind of thing. And people had the word Wicca, that was, that Muggle people sort of use in a very generic way to say that was kind of respectable witchy stuff. So I let them put that label on me, even though I don't claim that at all. And just saying feminist spirituality a lot of times. I would say I was going to church camp or going on a retreat. So if it was somebody I really was in a deep relationship with of any kind, then they would know what was up with me. If they weren't into it, I wouldn't particularly talk about it with them, but I also wasn't hiding it from them at all. And so I was not ordained until May of 2002, and that was, I retired effective January 2001. And part of the reason that I didn't ordain until when I did was there was an internship thing which required going somewhere and spending a good bit of time, and that was going to be difficult to do while I was working. So
your close friends would know, but maybe like your neighbors or people that you work with would not necessarily know.
No, and especially neighbors. I live in a townhouse, so the neighbors are very close. If you're outside in your backyard, there are privacy fences, but there's no sound barrier. So I always had in mind that if somebody asked about what was going on in my backyard, I would tell them that I belong to a group of women who like to get together and sing folk songs, really old folk songs.
Very, very old folk songs.
Although nobody ever asked, so there you go.
I love that. Thank you so
We
much.
all try to pretend that we aren't hearing the argument that's going on in the backyard of the house next to us. I mean, it's just better that we pretend that we aren't hearing it. So
it sounds like your neighborhood had some agreements around privacy.
I think so. So far, so good on that.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you.
Maggie, how would you describe the intersectionality between your spiritual practice and your faith with your passion, the things that drive you, your purpose here on this world?
Well, I think that my work, which is a lot of it focused right now on racial justice, really has grown out of my communities that I work with spiritually. Both my church and my pagan groups that I'm part of, a lot of them are very strongly oriented towards justice work. And of course, it's not like I don't care about feminism or environmentalism or anything like that, but at this point in time, I just feel like the most important place for me to put my energy is in anti-racist work, overcoming white supremacy within myself and within my communities. And luckily, those communities are wanting to go in that direction. Some more than others, but still.
I'm interested in hearing and learning from you on what it's been like to see things change as you move into this spiritual practice and faith, and also as you move within these social justice causes like anti-racism work and feminism work.
Yeah, I think, when I first became involved in this, it was more about feminism than anything else. I was trying to liberate myself from my inner non-feminist tendencies and to make sure that I was, becoming a full feminist myself. And, but I definitely feel like all oppressions are connected at their root. They're all based in the same human impulse to control other people out of fear, and because you can. And, it seems like this is a design flaw that humans have, and it manifests, but the opposite also manifests regularly with humans. There's always been this liberating expression that comes up in people as well. So and trying to find the balance and make sure the balance goes in a way that you think is liberatory. Yeah, that's what we're about. So I think I grew up in a family that was involved in the civil rights movement in Kansas. My parents did a sit-in, and my dad helped defend a Black neighbor who was being threatened with death threats and so forth, because I think he might have been head of the local NAACP, or he was a civil rights lawyer, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, and my dad took shifts in people around the clock, keeping an eye on his house to try to prevent violence. And so I kind of grew up feeling like I'm one of the good white people. I can't be racist. We have Black neighbors that we love, Well, so as more information has surfaced about this stuff, it's been revelatory and humbling, and has invited me to look at things more deeply. And we did have Black neighbors that were in our house regularly and that we cared about, and but I still felt awkward around Black people a lot of the time. I wasn't quite sure how to behave so as to signal that I was a good white person and that I would not try to hurt them. But anyway, my brother married a Black man, and even then, it wasn't until very late in the game that I started having the scales lifted from my eyes about a whole part of his life that I had no clue about. He was somebody who was very comfortable, not comfortable, but he was very used to being around a lot of white people. He was used to being one of the few people of his race in a group. And that gave me the wrong impression about things, I think. And, but, I'm trying to do better, learning bit by bit. And environmental oppression is so much of the bad things for the environment are done specifically at the cost of Black and brown people. That's where the damn polluting place is placed. And that's where, the white people have the political power to say, not in my backyard, but they don't have that power or haven't had it. So there's a lot of stuff that's just very intersectional, and that's how I see it now. I am not going to give up my feminism, but I still feel like I can be a feminist and also be working on anti-racism primarily.
Thank you. So before we close, I'd like to ask if there's, like a question that you'd wished we'd asked and we didn't ask, or is there anything that you might think that we should know before we sign off?
Not really. I guess you guys laugh so much on your show, and I love that about your podcast. And I just feel like I wasn't very funny.
So here's the thing. Actually, yeah, you weren't funny. You made me cry. So yeah. So let me ask you this: would you? Because to me, you are kind of like one of our elders, and I don't know how comfortable you feel with me saying that, but just listening to you, I'm going to get choked up again. But just listening to you talk about your journey has been so inspirational to me, and inspiration is not always funny. So please, you've done exactly what we wanted you to do, which was share you and share your journey or excuse me, what I wanted you to do, which is to share you and share your journey and give us some insight in what your brand of witchiness looks like.
There is a whole lighthearted part of my witchiness, and it's one of the things I love about witchiness is that you don't have to always be solemn, even if you're serious. You don't have to be solemn, and so that's one of the things I greatly appreciate about you guys. So keep on witchying your wit.
Oh, thank you. You tried. Thank you. Leilani, did you have anything else you'd like to say, my dear?
This may or may not make it into the actual podcast, depending on how you feel about it. But in one of the episodes that we recently released, it's called "When Witch Shit Goes Bad." I recounted my story of using coffee creamer.
Oh, I haven't listened to that one. Is it newly out?
Yeah, it just came out.
Friday.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I referenced you not by name, but by saying that a woman that I share space with in Circle told me and showed us how flammable powdered coffee creamer was.
Yeah.
So yeah. In addition,
I meant to say I am comfortable being considered to be an elder in the community. I'm honored to be so considered. I don't feel like it's something that a person claims. I think it's something that the community says. It's not something that a name that I would give myself, because I think it's something that you earn in a community, and either they think of you that way or they don't. And I'm just very honored to be thought of that way. So thank you.
I'd like to say that you are not only an elder and a leader in creating beautiful ritual, simple and beautiful ritual, but also letting us know that coffee creamer is like the jam. So.
So good.
Yeah, that's right. So you're hitting us on a number of different levels. So thank you so much.
Ritual tech.
That's it. Exactly. Ritual tech. Fun. Ritual. Oh, what is it? With fireworks. What do they call that? Ritual spectacle. It has been such a distinct pleasure to interview someone that I respect so much. Now we're going to hear Maggie share 2 poems that reflect how she thinks about her journey.
This poem is titled Marginal Wisdom. It's written by the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, who's a Unitarian minister, and it addresses something that I'm trying to learn about both and. They teach us to read in black and white. Truth is this, the rest is false. You are whole or broken. Who you love is acceptable or not. Life tells its truth in many hues. We are taught to think in either or, to believe the teachings of Jesus or Buddha, to believe in human potential or a power beyond a single will. I am broken or I am powerful. Life embraces multiple truths, speaks of both and. We are taught to see in absolutes, good versus evil, male versus female, old versus young, gay versus straight. Let us see the fractions, the spectrum, the margins. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of our worlds. Let us make our lives sanctuaries to nurture our many identities. The day is coming when all will know that the rainbow world is more gorgeous than monochrome, that a river of identities can ebb and flow over the static, stubborn rocks in its course, that the margins hold the center. This poem is titled You Are Not on Call for the Pain of the World, written by Liz James. I don't really know anything about the author, but this is what I can read to remind me that self-care is part of caring. You are not on call for the pain of the world. I know you feel every hit of the hammer beating plowshares into swords and people into plowshares. And every time you fail to step between the blow and its target, the injustice is sewn into your bones too. And so when the hammer rises, you must rise with it, raising your voice, your eyes, your awareness, your body, whatever part of you that can be given as an offering. You cannot stay this way forever, sewn to this cacophony of blows, every movement of yours a follow, until your body is owned by the drumbeat of the raising of weapons, until your days string together in a stuttering heartbreak of rage, and you cannot catch breath. But this is what you promised to those who don't get to choose whether to show up for the fight. You promised that you would hold nothing back. I know. Except you cannot be on call for the pain of the world. It is not work that can be done without sleep. When we said that people are too sacred to be beaten into plowshares or swords, we meant you. We need you for the fight, and we need you for all the things that are less and more than fighting. We need you to be ready to listen in the soft way earth listens to rain in the hours before dawn, to be tender, to cradle precious things, to hold the smell of dew in your hair, to hum the song that flowers will rise up through the earth to hear. I need you to stay in love with the world.
Thank you so much for being a part of this and for sharing those two incredible poems. I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate your joining us here today. Thank you again.
I love you so much.
Bye.
Love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Witchy Wit Podcast.
Email us at witchywit123@gmail.com. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Get exclusive content and support us on Patreon.
Stay witchy, y'all.